Morning. It's good to be here, though week Wednesday we're gone again. But anyway, just while Peter's getting ready and everything. 2 years ago about this time, we never dreamt we would be involved in and going to such a place as Vanuatu. It wasn't until there was an article in the Faith and Focus that I read on the Sunday afternoon. I said to Peter, maybe that's something you could do. You know, they want an elder. And from that time, the Lord didn't leave us alone. In that sense, we prayed that the Lord would, that if he wanted us to go there, that the Lord would put a love of the people in our hearts, and also that he would make the door very wide open so that we would know that that was where he wanted us to be. By the end of that year, we were continuing to pray for the Lord to put a continued love for the people, and that he would shut the door if he didn't want us to be there, because it had been very wide open. And he would also give us the ability to learn the language Bislama, so that we could relate and walk alongside the people there. When Peter and I first started going around together, so that's about 45 years ago, he had one evening talked about, he thought about doing some short-term mission work. And I said, that's really great. I think that's marvellous. If you want to do that, you go ahead. I'll find somebody else. But I was quite real about that. But no, he said, it's fine. No, I'm fine. So, but it's a privilege that we're able to be involved in this work. It's not always easy. The temperatures, the climate is quite uncomfortable at times, but we see the need for somebody to be there at this time, and the Lord has put a love of the people in our hearts. But our love for you, our home congregation, the members here, is still strong, and you're very much a part of our hearts and our lives. So thank you for the privilege that we're able to be there. And thank you also for those who have given clothing and linen and stuff. I've got more than enough to get over there now. I'll need to store some, and we're only allowed to take 74 kilos total. But I'll leave Peter to take on.
We've done a presentation in Wellington, in Hastings, and in Masterton while we're here. And like today, every time the sermon or the songs, they all speak a lot louder to us than they ever used to, especially the songs. Like this morning, we sang from Psalm 22. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations will bow down before him. When you just stay in one place, you sing that, and you know it's true, and you mean it. But once you actually go to the other nations, it takes quite a different meaning. And then we sang from 423, from the earth wide bounds, from ocean's farthest coast, through gates of pearl, streams in a countless host. They'll come from all those places that you may go to holiday, to them, to the islands, we do, others go to many other places. But from all those coasts, there's people who are coming before the throne of God. So we'll talk briefly about Vanuatu again. To orient yourself, here's Vanuatu, Australia to the left. New Zealand is just off the map, and this is the country itself. So we are in the center, in Port Vila. You see these three arrows, that's where the congregations are. So that's our patch. It's Avate, not the main island, but it's where the capital is, Port Vila. It was the sign that was briefly installed. Parents helped put it up. It was there in 2017. But within 3 weeks, it came down the hill. Hill just in front of that. And just late last year we put it up again in a slightly smaller form. And week somebody came past in a bus, sign, and came to church on Sunday. So it's good to have that there. This is the church. The front bit, the bit on the left, is the auditorium. To the right is where the elder now lives, Douglas Scott. This is his kitchen. With the funds that are left over from the church camp collection from last year, we hope to double that in size and make it much more convenient and better also for church function. That's the inside. It's not quite a marble bench or a granite bench, but they're happy with the table. Rain comes in the season 3 inches an hour, so that's after an hour or so. But it drains away fairly well, if the rain stops. Congregation at worship. This was taken just before we left to see Joanna there on the right by the door. She sits on the back so she can count. We've had one Sunday 9 people. We've had around about 9 or 10. But the Lord heard our prayers. The Sunday after that there were 58. And then 40. So it really goes up and down to the extent that people can afford to come or have opportunity. Again, that really reminded us that the Lord is building his church. It's not our great activity or the brilliant sermons or anything. They help, but it's the Lord that's building them. This is one of the places we go for a Bible study once a fortnight or a prayer meeting. You see the house on the left, corrugated iron. Out of town is the main building material. And they build a separate kitchen. You see that on the right. And even in town, a lot of the houses are constructed out of this material. Though they use a lot of concrete blocks as well. Early this year, I was ordained, installed as an elder there. It was quite an occasion. Get the garlands and everything. It's a bit more ostentatious than in New Zealand. But it's a very solemn occasion for the congregation. Here Douglas Scout, he was a deacon. He's also installed as an elder the next Sunday. So there's 2 of us now. And he's while we are here, he's leading the worship each Sunday, and they will be doing that just about now. At the door, this congregation welcomes them and shakes hands, so to speak. Photos are taken. This is the printer that, with the extra OMB funds, we were able to buy, and below there you see the 2 hymn books we were able to print. To the right, the big numbers one, and to the left, the Lenakol, the Tana language. They really treasure their own language. They do speak Bislama, which is the trade language, but there's people for whom Dutch is still a first language. Your first language in which you hear the gospel speaks to you most powerfully, and that's the same there. They're really glad for the big numbers language. Andrew Fox has completed the translation of the Old Testament, and we hope that it will be, or the Lord willing, will be in print by the end of this year. And there's now a process going for that to be checked. A lot of my work is, I need to translate sermons, to deliver them in Bislama, but also a lot of church material, confessions, catechisms. They're very rare in their own language, and it's very important that they have them in their own language, at least in the Bislama, which is in the trade language, or in their own tribal or village language. After church, people stay for any amount of time, especially if it's sunny. We see them gathering after church. That girl saw I was taking a photo, so she took a nice pose. Here, the elderly man there, he's Greg Fox. He started the work in Malakula and started the translation of the New Testament there in the local language. We have a shared lunch every month, so that's warm cooked food on the whole, and that's set up there for us. Congregation sits around. This is our house where we live. You may have seen these last year as well when I presented it. It's the rear, it's very green, like New Zealand. Inside is all quite livable. Kitchen is tiled. They have a new stove. These are the bedrooms. Our bed. And this is the car that we really needed to buy for Joanna to be able to get around early this year. Her back has much improved with the medication she's on now. And the twinges, there's discomfort, but there's no pain. No pain that she cannot function. And we're really thankful to the Lord prayers that have been lifted up to God for us and for her. In July we went to Malakula for two Sundays. Bamboo seats. And the congregation at worship. I was privileged to lead in worship there for the 2 Sundays then. I did a Bible study preaching workshop, led some other things. And it was very encouraging to be there with that congregation. That's the accommodation for visiting missionaries. We stayed in the small house on the right-hand side. That's how they build in the villages, woven bamboo with leaf on the roof, sometimes over tarpaulin, and they're sound houses, but not so strong in a cyclone. This is the congregation. There's about 60 members and about 100 people in worship. The first congregation, or the mother congregation of the others, really. Yeah, Presbyterian Reformed Church. Another one. They have puppies and they're just as cute as they are here. Joanna wanted to take one, but that wasn't an option. This is the departure lounge and the check-in and everything. And this is the airport. It used to look a lot better, but then there was the land dispute, so the disputing party burned the buildings, and the dispute is still not resolved, so they haven't been rebuilt yet. So they just have a shed and a gate to keep people out. That's here, but on the other side there is no gate, so you can just walk in as you please. We had Presbytery there in November. Again, there's big welcomes and garlands. We received some presents too, and it's quite traditional and ceremony that goes with that. The moderator, there's an opening sermon. I forgot to take photos of the proceedings when we had our meetings, so but we're all glad that it was over. We met fairly solidly for about 1.5 days. So the man on the left is Tom Court. He's an elder in Tana. He was there on his own for 19 years, but now the man next to him, sort of at the back, Alan Nico, he's become an elder last year. Then next to him is Mikael Tafhepi, he's an elder in Malakula, and next to him the pastor, Pastor Kenny Arpi, and then Douglas Scott and yours truly. Here too, after Presbytery, we had a large meal, and that's called a lap, ground yam, wrapped in banana leaves, and cooked over inside hot stones. Anybody who's been to Vanuatu may have seen it or partaken in it. And that's when it's unwrapped, cut up, and we dunk all the bits in coconut milk. This was our time in Tana. Those who have been there might know about the volcano at the south that's always active. It's claim to fame. there's the church there. In 2015, a team from New Zealand, people from New Zealand went to help rebuild it after Cyclone Pam. All that was left was the 4 courses of blocks that you see at the bottom, and they helped rebuild it. This is where we stayed, the mission house. Missionary Tim Zylstra was there for 9 years in the late 90s and early 2000s to translate the New Testament in the local language there. The congregation at worship. And the man in the red t-shirt, Alan Nico, he was ordained. It's still a photo from last year. That's a chapel in a neighboring village where there's 4 members living. And these are their families. Market in all fresh mangoes and everything else that people need. And this is the beach, just opposite the market. So it's all. This is not where the big ferry goes. That's a bit further south. But there's a small jetty you can see on the right. People go there, get crabs and fish and all sorts. This man, Sepeth Api, he died on the 10th of December. He was the first convert in Malakula. And he was for a year in Port Vila while we were there. And he was a great help and encouragement to us too and to the congregation. He was 78. He had been quite sickly the last few years, but yeah. He and his family were severely persecuted for taking a stand on the gospel. They were evicted from the village. They were abused. At one point, it sounds a bit strange maybe to you, but cannibalism wasn't outlawed. Well, it was outlawed, but it was still not uncommon, sadly. But there was a group said, well, we need to get rid of those white men, so we'll kill them and eat them. So he said, you got to kill and eat me first. And it sort of put a stop to proceedings in that direction. That's how they dealt with missionaries in the 19th century, especially the island of Eromanga. But the Lord sustained them and kept him also. So he was a pastor there, an elder, and he worked hard at the proclamation of the gospel in his island. Funeral proceedings are a bit different. This is the body coming from the hospital. His body is wrapped in polythene, and the men there are preparing the casket to put him back in there with lots of cloths. Put him back in, lid is closed. I was privileged to lead a short service before he was flown in. The coffin was flown in a charter plane back to Malakula, to his island, where he was buried the same day. Transport, double cab Kia truck, small truck, will seat about up to 30 people, if they're small enough. 14 or so in the back, 10 in a double cab, average. Pardon? 14, sorry, 1-4, not 40. But if you see bigger trucks, there can be 20 on the back. It's the local transport in most of the islands, a ute with a cage on it. And it's the ferry that goes between the larger islands. Twin otters fly between the islands, and the ATRs that also fly between New Zealand cities, fly between the larger cities. Fruit, mangoes, pawpaw, lovely flowers there too. Trees are still getting quite old there. That route that you see between Joanna and Douglas, that's a manioc root grown for about a year. It's about 6 feet tall. Most of it may still be edible, but sometimes they go a bit, they don't taste as nice. So then they go to the pigs, if there's pigs around. There's a millipede. We don't walk bare feet in the grass, because one bite will set you back for 3 days. It's very, very painful. Not fatal, but very painful. African snails, about this big, probably 3 or 4 inches. Spiders. And coconut crabs. That's a big one. On the market, there was about $4,050 for the restaurants. The blue is very, the colors are very nice. That's a snake bean, not to be mistaken for a real one, which some people did when I sent this through. It's about 1 meter long. This is the market in Port Vila, where we do our shopping. It's quite good. You don't need to barter. You just pay the price that's written on the produce, and that's good. We've done some projects. The church camp collection provided for cyclone shutters for the church auditorium. That's the finished shutter, and they're in place now. And I haven't heard of any cyclones there, so we haven't had to use them yet. We also replaced or repositioned the driveway. The original access became very difficult. So built block concrete. That's all filled in now with metal, and we go through a gate at the end there. Steps, the grass was getting very slippery, the top of the concrete steps, so especially elderly people, it was very dangerous to walk down, so that's all safe too now. Lovely sunsets from Tana. On the smaller photos, it's a bit more impressive, but you see all the sun, the rays of the sun. So that's us in Tana, in Malakula. We're very thankful, like Joanna said, that we can serve there. It's a privilege to do so. The last few weeks we were there, I encouraged, it's a small congregation, and I've become more aware of that, but the prayers of God's people, pray for them. There's about 20 members, a regular attendance of about 10 members, because they're everywhere. They pray for us, and that's how God binds his people together, through prayer, through an awareness of them. There was no notice for that, but if anybody has a spare study Bible, not the smaller ones, because the print is too small for them, not because their eyesight probably deteriorates after 35, and they need reading glasses. But if you've got any study Bible this size, let me know, and I'll have a look at it, because the elders preach, but they don't have material, they don't have commentaries, they don't read English very well. And for that matter, if you would have a medium-sized English commentary you're not using, that would also be welcome, because they read a commentary with a dictionary and then write their sermons from there. Yes. If you have any questions, you want to talk to us afterwards. I've kept you long enough, I think. So thank you very much for your support, for your prayers, for your encouragement. We're very glad to be able to serve. Thank you.